God-level duplication system. Chapter 221. Lin Xuan shocked the entire audience. On the arena, Lin Xuan stood with his hands behind his back, his expression indifferent. It was as if nothing had happened to him. The arena was completely intact. This arena was specially made for the Scorching Sun region competition by the Yang Essence sect. Its material was so strong that even late spiritual essence stage warriors could not damage it. It was normal for it to be intact. However, the square below it was not that hard. Below the arena, with Arena 3 as the center, fine cracks appeared, spreading in all directions like a spider web. The cracks covered almost half of the square. This square was actually quite solid. Under normal circumstances, even mid-spiritual essence stage warriors would find it very difficult to damage it in the slightest. The Yang Essence sect had held dozens of Scorching Sun region competition matches in this square, but none of them had any problems. But today, it has become like this. Furthermore, Lin Xuan's air cannon had landed on the arena instead of the square. In other words, Lin Xuan did not directly reveal the tightly packed cracks on the square. The indirect energy that passed through the arena was what caused the cracks. This showed the terrifying power of that punch. A few hundred meters away, Zhou Wenhao was lying on the ground, vomiting blood. His vitality had become slightly weaker. It looked like his injuries were quite serious. When everyone saw this scene, they were instantly dead silent. Everyone widened their eyes, their mouths slightly opened, and they stood rooted to the ground, their eyes filled with disbelief. After a few breaths of time, some people gradually came back to their senses. In an instant, the sound of people taking in cold breaths echoed. The scene became noisy, and the sound wave shook the sky, far surpassing what it had been before. I didn't see it wrong, did I? Zhou Wenhao lost just like that? Not only did he lose, but Lin Xuan's punch also just now caused the earth to tremble and countless cracks to appear on the square. Isn't his strength a little too strong? He should at least have the combat strength of a mid-spiritual essence stage, right? Since Lin Xuan defeated Zhou Wenhao so easily, Wu Xin and Chen Feng, who are both equally well known as Zhou Wenhao, are no match for Lin Xuan. Doesn't that mean that Lin Xuan is the #1 genius of the Scorching Sun domain's younger generation? Not necessarily. There is also Zhang Yuqin. Zhang Yuqin was the #1 genius of Scorching Sun domain, after all. He was the only genius. He should be slightly stronger than Zhou Wenhao, Chen Feng, and the other two. Not necessarily. After Lin Xuan defeated Zhou Wenhao, he looked calm and relaxed. It's obvious that he hasn't used his full strength yet. No matter what, the reputation of the #1 genius of Scorching Sun domain is now in Lin Xuan's hands. Everyone was discussing amongst themselves, and they couldn't help but cry out in shock. Their eyes were fixed on Lin Xuan, and their pupils slightly widened. It was obvious that they were still in shock and had yet to recover from their shock. Everyone had their own guesses about the result of this battle. In their opinion, there might be a great battle. Because, although Lin Xuan's reputation wasn't as good as the 4 young masters, his achievements were still extraordinary. However, the one who would lose in the end would be Lin Xuan. After all, Lin Xuan was a spirit opening stage warrior. Even if he had the combat strength of a spiritual essence stage, in their opinion, he couldn't be compared to the famous 4 young masters. However, they had never thought that things would turn out this way. This had completely exceeded their expectations. Not only had Lin Xuan successfully withstood the attack of Zhou Wenhao, but he had also shattered his sword light and launched a counterattack. He sent Zhou Wenhao flying on the spot, causing him to suffer serious injuries. The remaining attacks landed on the arena, causing countless cracks to appear on the square. It caused the entire square to become extremely chaotic. The gap between their strengths was like the distance between the heavens and the earth. It was virtually unimaginable. Everyone was extremely shocked by this scene, and they were unable to calm down for a long time. In this battle, Lin Xuan revealed his true strength. He had actually surpassed Zhou Wenhao and the other 2 young masters. It was very likely that Lin Xuan had reached the mid-spiritual essence stage. Everyone was astounded by Lin Xuan's strength at this precise moment. They estimated that even Zhang Yuqin might not be able to defeat him. His strength was simply astounding. What was even more terrifying was that Lin Xuan's current cultivation base was only at the 8th level of spirit opening stage, not even at the peak of the spirit opening stage, but he had the combat strength of a mid-spiritual essence stage. He had displayed strength that surpassed several levels of his cultivation base. This had broken the record for the Scorching Sun domain for hundreds of years. This was a sign of Lin Xuan's terrifying talent. Lin Xuan's extraordinary talent astounded everyone. Putting aside his combat strength, the talent he had displayed had already surpassed Zhang Yuqin's. He had firmly become the new #1 genius of Scorching Sun domain. Everyone was shocked. They almost couldn't think anymore. Because the scene in front of them was too shocking. It had almost exceeded their tolerance. On the south side of the platform, the higher-ups of the 5 major powers of Kangyuan country were also stunned. They couldn't react for a long time. They found it hard to accept such a scene. This had gone beyond their imagination. On the northern stands, the royal family of Wind Flame Valley and the royal family of Red Flame Country had gloomy expressions on their faces. The 4th true disciple of Wind Flame Valley, Yi Li, had died in Lin Xuan's hands. Lin Xuan had also blackmailed the 2nd genuine Wind Flame Valley disciple for the storage ring, causing them to lose all of their faces. Zhou Wenha and Zhou Wenji from Red Flame Country were both defeated by Lin Xuan and served as his stepping stones. Their hatred for him was not small. The leaders of the 2 major powers, however, were also astounded by Lin Xuan's performance at this time. Their facial expressions changed, and they let out a long breath. Their faces showed signs of defeat. Even Zhang Yuqin was far from being able to compare with Lin Xuan's talent. In the future, not only would he be able to reach the Elemental Sea, but he would also have a high chance of reaching a higher level. Furthermore, Lin Xuan had already entered Huyu and Zenren's line of sight this time. It was impossible for them to deal with him. After Lin Xuan revealed his true strength in the profound Essence List ranking competition, he would soon be the center of attention for the major powers in Fengwu State, and he would gain a great reputation. He was not someone they could afford to offend. They could only give up on this grudge. They did not dare to find trouble with Lin Xuan again. Furthermore, they had to order their disciples to restrain themselves, and not bully the disciples of Kangyuan country anymore. Or else, when Lin Xuan returns next time, it was very likely that his strength had already surpassed theirs. At that time, they would truly be in danger. Chapter 222. Helplessness. All of the Yang Essence sect's upper echelons in the east, including the sect leader, were astounded by Lin Xuan's performance and hadn't yet calmed down. However, after they recovered from their shock, their expressions became awkward. Not only did Lin Xuan destroy the square that was used for the Scorching Sun region competition, but he also brought disgrace to the Yang Essence sect. The combat strength that he had displayed had exceeded their imagination. Even if Zhang Yuqin were to win this competition against Lin Xuan would have taken the top spot in the Scorching Sun domain after the event. In the past few decades, the name of the Scorching Sun domain's #1 genius has always been used to describe the disciples of the Yang Essence sect. However, Lin Xuan has now taken possession of it. They naturally didn't feel good about it. In addition, Lin Xuan's combat strength was too shocking. However, he had never revealed the concept from the beginning until the end. Lin Xuan was much more powerful than the top geniuses of the 4 young masters. No one would believe that he hadn't comprehended the concept. In other words, from the beginning of the competition until now, Lin Xuan has never revealed his true strength. Even a genius like Zhang Yuqin wouldn't have any chance of winning against Lin Xuan. If Zhang Yuqin lost to Lin Xuan again, the Yang Essence sect would lose all their faces. All the higher-ups of the Yang Essence sect looked dissatisfied and depressed. But even so, they had to hide some of their emotions and didn't dare to show them too clearly. Because Huyu and Zenren was right next to them. And he stayed behind because of Lin Xuan. This clearly showed that Lin Xuan had gotten his attention. If the Yang Essence sect dared to harm Lin Xuan, not to mention the major power behind Huyu and Zenren, even he could easily destroy the entire Yang Essence sect. They would naturally hide the resentment in their hearts, not daring to reveal it. Furthermore, from today onwards, they couldn't attack Lin Xuan or even the Drifting Cloud sect behind him. Instead, they had to change their attitude and treat them kindly. Because the current Lin Xuan has already revealed his potential. Naturally, they wouldn't dare to offend the Yang Essence sect. A genius like Lin Xuan was far from what a small, Scorching Sun domain could handle. In addition, if they improved their relationship with each other and took the initiative to rope Lin Xuan in, the Yang Essence sect would benefit a lot when he grew up. Comparing them, they naturally knew what to do. Lin Xuan's future achievements had already exceeded their scope of understanding. They didn't even dare to imagine it. At the highest point of the stance, Huiyuan Zhenren looked at Lin Xuan with a glint in his eyes and nodded slightly. That's right. After he gave a flat evaluation, he continued to lazily lean on the chair and drink the spirit wine. However, these words shocked the upper echelons of the Yang Essence sect. Huiyuan Zhenren had never taken the initiative to praise anyone. But he had praised Lin Xuan in such a way. This was enough to prove that Lin Xuan's talent was extraordinary. At the same time, this also showed how much Huiyuan Zhenren valued him. This shocked all the higher-ups in the Yang Essence sect. Wu Xin and Chen Feng looked dispirited. They thought that they wouldn't lose to Zhou Wenha. However, Lin Xuan easily defeated Zhou Wenha, and he even sustained some serious injuries. Furthermore, if it weren't for the fact that he had chosen to escape in time, he might have been killed on the spot. Lin Xuan's strength had already far surpassed theirs. They admitted that they were no match for him. In today's Scorching Sun region competition, they could only fight for the position after third place. After that, they looked at Zhang Yuqin. Zhang Yuqin was the only genius at Scorching Sun domain. Although they were all from the four young masters, he had always been above them. Normally, they would fight Zhang Yuqin together. But now, they were all hoping that Zhang Yuqin could defeat Lin Xuan. If a rising star stood above them, they would lose a lot of face. Zhang Yuqin, on the other hand, was in no mood to pay attention to them. His gaze fell upon Lin Xuan with incomparable solemnity. Although he had heard all kinds of news about Lin Xuan before, he only treated him as a junior and thought that Lin Xuan would not be able to threaten him. However, in this battle, he realized that Lin Xuan's combat strength was terrifyingly high. Lin Xuan might even surpass him. He had no confidence in winning against Lin Xuan. All he could say was that he would do his best. At the same time, this clearly showed that Lin Xuan's talent had already surpassed his own. He was extremely shocked for Lin Xuan on the arena. Lin Xuan had a calm expression. However, a bitter smile flashed across the depths of his eyes. I didn't control my strength well. The commotion I caused was a little too big. Lin Xuan looked at the scene on the square. He could not help but smile bitterly. It was also early in the morning today that he had finally cultivated the golden scale barbaric elephant arts to the small success level. Although he had already successfully controlled it due to his various high-grade talents, he wasn't very clear about its true power. He could only make a rough guess through comparison. This time, he felt that he should be able to defeat Zhou Wenha's all-out attack. He had only revealed a small part of his physical strength, plus his martial art, Tyrant Fist. However, he never expected that after he used his martial art, the power of his physical strength would increase by a large margin. Not only had he easily defeated Zhou Wenha's all-out attack, he had even counterattacked. If it wasn't because Zhou Wenha knew the pros and cons, he might kill Zhou Wenha on the spot. Furthermore, he couldn't stop the fist imprint from dissipating. If that happened, he might suffer a backlash and be injured. In the end, he could only allow that fist imprint to land on the arena. It caused the entire plaza to tremble for quite a while. Its power might have reached the mid-spiritual essence stage level. This had exceeded Lin Xuan's expectations. This time, he had successfully defeated Zhou Wenha. However, this also broke his original plan. He had originally planned to defeat Zhang Yuqin in the end. He wanted to stir up the greatest shock and then obtain even more energy points. And now, his strength has been exposed a bit more. The result was completely different. Lin Xuan did not know whether to laugh or cry. He could only take things one step at a time. However, he had obtained quite a lot of energy points this time. Lin Xuan looked at the void in front of him and saw that there were a few million more energy points. Lin Xuan slightly nodded his head and revealed a trace of a smile. Forget it. I will defeat Zhang Yuqin with one strike later. Lin Xuan thought to himself. Chapter 223. One attack. Now that he's revealed his true strength, he's not going to waste any more time. After that, Lin Xuan looked at the judge who was not far away from the arena, the Grand Elder of the Yang Essence sect. Grand Elder was startled. When he sensed Lin Xuan's gaze, he reacted and glanced at him with mixed feelings. This time, Lin Xuan's strength exceeded his expectations. Now, even if Lin Xuan was only a spirit opening stage, he could still threaten Zhang Yukin. Additionally, Lin Xuan had destroyed the reputation of the top genius in Scorching Sun domain. He was shocked and his heart was filled with complex emotions. After that, he jumped onto the arena and announced with a loud voice. Lin Xuan has won this battle. Lin Xuan has advanced into the top 3. His voice spread and immediately woke everyone up from their daze. Everyone once again fell into an uproar. Lin Xuan jumped off the arena with a calm expression. Under the gazes of everyone in the arena, he walked back to the seats on the south viewing platform. Only then did everyone withdraw their gazes. The shock in their hearts could not be quelled for a long time. On the arena, the Grand Elder continued. The 4th round has ended. Zhang Yukin, Lin Xuan, and Chen Feng had advanced to the top 3. The 8 major powers of Scorching Sun domain will lavishly reward the 3 of them because they are the top geniuses in that domain. Congratulations to them. This time, the Grand Elder surprisingly placed Lin Xuan in front of Chen Feng. His meaning could not be any more obvious. But this time, no one doubted him. Even Wind Flame Valley and Chen Feng were dispirited and didn't say anything. Lin Xuan's performance in the battle with Zhou Wenha had already explained everything. Whether it was his talent, potential, or true strength, he had already surpassed Chen Feng, who was one of the 4 young master's disciples. As soon as Grand Elder's voice faded, thunderous applause was heard from the crowd. Almost everyone's eyes were focused on Lin Xuan, Zhang Yukin, and Chen Feng. However, most of them were looking at Lin Xuan. Lin Xuan had always been improving and had never failed. His talent and potential astounded everyone, and they were all eagerly anticipating his next performance. Lin Xuan had won the title of the number 1 genius of Scorching Sun domain from Zhang Yukin. Everyone was looking forward to seeing if he could win the title of the number 1 genius of Scorching Sun domain's younger generation. On the arena, Grand Elder continued. Next is the 5th round of the competition. The ranking competition will decide the top 3. He gave everyone half an hour to rest when he remembered that Lin Xuan and Chen Feng had both gone through a great battle and their physical strength and spirit were still not at their peak condition. Half an hour later, this match in the ranking competition officially begins. Immediately, the attention on the scene quieted down, and we waited for the final round of the competition. On the northern viewing platform, Chen Feng took a deep look at Zhang Yukin and Lin Xuan. After he ate a few pills, he closed his eyes and began to regulate his breathing. On the southern viewing platform, Lin Xuan's expression was indifferent. In that battle with Zhou Wenha, he hadn't even used his spirit energy or concept. He had only used a small part of his physical strength, so he naturally didn't need to recover. However, he couldn't waste this half an hour of free time. He closed his eyes and started to comprehend the golden scale barbaric elephant arts. Soon, half an hour passed. Grandfather's voice was heard again. The 5th round of the competition has officially begun. The first match, Lin Xuan vs Chen Feng. Everyone on the scene perked up when they heard this. This was a battle between master-level geniuses. In the last match, Lin Xuan only used 2 moves to defeat Zhou Wenha. In this match, how many times could Chen Feng withstand Lin Xuan's attack? Everyone became interested and guessed. Not long after, Lin Xuan and Chen Feng arrived at the arena and stood opposite each other. Grand Elder glanced at the 2 of them and announced, "The competition begins." After he said that, he turned around and jumped out of the arena. On the arena, Lin Xuan looked indifferently at Chen Feng, who had a cold expression on his face. His attribute panel had appeared in front of Lin Xuan. What he had was similar to what Zhou Wenha had. They all had a rank 8 cultivation technique. He naturally couldn't let go of this good opportunity. Consume 200,000 energy points. Duplication is successful. Expends 200,000 energy points. Duplication successful. Wind Flame Vacuum Formula, low rank 8, small completion 100,000 energy points were consumed. Duplication successful. Obtained Wind Spirit Sword, high rank 7 spirit weapon in the blink of an eye. He had duplicated all the treasures he liked from Chen Feng. After that, Lin Xuan nodded slightly. After that, he didn't want to say anything more and decided to defeat Chen Feng. Since he had already exposed some of his strength, there was no need to waste any more time. At this moment, Chen Feng spoke. Lin, you are very strong, and I am no match for you. However, can you let me use my strongest attack? If you can withstand my attack, I will admit defeat. Chen Feng said it in a deep voice. He was one of the 4 young masters of Scorching Sun domain, and he was also one of the top geniuses of Scorching Sun domain. His pride didn't allow him to admit defeat. He knew that he wasn't a match for Lin Xuan, but he wanted to test the gap between them. That was why he made such a condition. Lin Xuan nodded. This was exactly what he wanted. Only by enduring Chen Feng's strongest attack and defeating him would he be able to cause the greatest shock and obtain the most energy points. He was prepared to do this in the first place. It was perfect for Chen Feng to take the initiative to suggest this. He naturally wouldn't refuse. Sure. Make your move. Lin Xuan said it indifferently. Lin Xuan, take this. Chen Feng shouted out loudly, and then he unleashed the full power of a peak. Spiritual Essence Stage Level 1 ripples of wind and waves could be seen in the square. It was only at this moment that everyone realized that Chen Feng's strength was actually a notch stronger than Zhou Wenha's and Wu Xin's. However, it was a pity that Chen Feng was facing Lin Xuan, who could easily defeat Zhou Wenha. This was destined to be his defeat. If it were in the past, Chen Feng would at least be ranked 2nd in the competition. But this time, he could only be ranked 3rd. And there was a high chance that this move of his would not be able to defeat Lin Xuan. At most, it would injure him. On the arena, Chen Feng did not pay attention to these things. Within his danshan, the spiritual essence was rolling and surging. 45% sword intent, 40% artistic conception of wind, 40% artistic conception of fire, and level 3 half artistic conception of gold. After the 4 great concepts were unleashed, they carried an even more terrifying power. This time, Chen Feng didn't hold back at all because of this all-out attack. Wind Flame Slash. After that, he shouted and took out his wind spirit sword to attack. In an instant, the wind and clouds in the surroundings surged and the flames spread in all directions, turning the entire arena into a sea of fire. Chapter 224. He defeated Chen Feng. Around the ring, within a kilometer, fierce winds raged and a sea of fire surged. This power was not something that an ordinary early spiritual essence stage could withstand. When the higher-ups of the surrounding powers saw this, their hearts trembled. With their previous experience, all the mid-spiritual essence, stage and above martial artists hurriedly unleashed their power. They surrounded the stands, preventing the junior disciples from being affected. If the disciples were injured by watching the competition, this would be a little awkward. At the same time, they were also shocked. Chen Feng was indeed a master-level genius. His power had already reached the spiritual essence stage, 4th layer. He had surpassed Zhou Wenha and Wu Xin by a lot. Unfortunately, Chen Feng was fighting Lin Xuan. Lin Xuan's talent had far exceeded Zhang Yuqin's. Even an ordinary early spiritual essence stage wouldn't be able to withstand such power. But could Chen Feng take 3 of Lin Xuan's attacks? Everyone looked over. On the arena, Lin Xuan looked at the sea of fire around him with an indifferent expression and shook his head slightly. Chen Feng's power was not bad, but he could not pose any threat to Lin Xuan. Chen Feng's heart skipped a beat when he saw Lin Xuan acting as if nothing had happened. The bad feeling in his heart was getting stronger and stronger. But at this moment, he couldn't care about anything else. He could only do his best. As for the outcome, it wasn't up to him to decide. He swung his sword. The sea of fire condensed into a huge sword radiance that was several dozen zhang in length. This sword light was his most powerful attack. This was also a skill that could threaten spiritual essence stage 4th layer. As if it were tearing the sky apart, this enormous sword light descended from the sky. It slashed down at Lin Xuan. Wherever the sword light passed by, it was charred black as if the void had been torn apart. Its power was extremely terrifying. This power is not bad. Lin Xuan calmly gave an evaluation and attacked. Tyrant Fist. He threw out a punch. In an instant, a power as violent as thunder poured out like endless waves. A domineering aura spread out from Lin Xuan's body. At this moment, Lin Xuan seemed to have become an invincible overlord. The aura spread out in all directions, and even Chen Feng's sea of fire was forced back. The sea of fire was pushed back 100 meters. In comparison, it was obvious who was stronger. Seeing this, everyone on the square nodded slightly. Indeed, Lin Xuan was the stronger one in the arena. Around Lin Xuan, the energy had crushed the air. A fist print was instantly formed. The fist print was wrapped in a domineering aura as it faced Chen Feng's huge sword light. The air cannon's fist print was far from being as big as the sword light. But its power was not the slightest bit inferior. No one dared to underestimate it. Under the gaze of everyone present, the air cannon landed on the huge sword light. An ear-splitting explosion rang out. The shockwave caused even the spiritual essence stage warriors around the stands to be pushed back a few meters. The strength of these two men shocked the higher-ups of the various powers. They were worthy of being called the top geniuses of the Scorching Sun domain. Everyone looked over. As expected, in the sky, Chen Feng's huge sword light was blocked in midair. The sword light could no longer move forward. The one that blocked the sword beam was Lin Xuan's air cannon fist seal. The size of the air cannon fist imprint was less than 1% of the huge sword beam. In comparison, it showed how terrifying Lin Xuan's strength was. And this was not all. A crisp sound that made one's heart palpitate rang out. With the air cannon's fist imprint as the center, incomparably thick cracks appeared on the enormous sword light and spread out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, they covered the entire sword light. A terrifying explosion sounded out. The huge sword radiance, which was surrounded by endless violent winds, exploded with a loud bang. Chen Feng's strongest fire flow turned into natural energy and dissipated. It brought along an even more terrifying aftershock that wrapped around scorching heat waves and wild wind that swept in all directions. Even the higher-ups of the various major powers had reduced and dispersed their power by about half. Everyone was even more shocked by the strength of the two of them. And on the arena, Chen Feng was stunned when he saw this scene. Then he said in a defeated manner, as expected, "I still lost. I can't even withstand one of your attacks." Chen Feng's eyes were gloomy as he muttered. But immediately after, he felt a sense of fear. Not good. What's going on? He looked forward and saw the raging waves of fire disperse. The air cannon that was emitting a domineering aura actually seemed to be completely undamaged. It continued to attack him with its original might and speed. So, it's from here. Chen Feng laughed bitterly and knew that he had been completely defeated. Not only was his strongest attack unable to receive a single punch from Lin Xuan, but it could also not even weaken the power of his fist. The gap between them was very obvious. He no longer had any thoughts of fighting Lin Xuan. He turned around and jumped out of the arena. If he jumped off the arena, he would be considered to have lost. But since he had already lost, it was useless for him to stay any longer. The domineering air cannon seal drew out an afterimage and smashed onto the spot where Chen Feng had previously been. If Chen Feng stayed for a while, he might be seriously injured. At this time, the air cannon's fist print stopped and disappeared. This also highlighted Lin Xuan's precise control of strength. The higher-ups of the various major powers were shocked when they saw this. None of them, who were in the mid-spiritual essence stage and above, could control their strength with such precision. But Lin Xuan, a junior disciple who wasn't even 20 years old, was able to do it so easily. They never thought that Lin Xuan could still have such precise control over his strength after maintaining such shocking cultivation speed and advancement. This was too amazing. Once more, Lin Xuan's talent astounded the leaders of the various major powers. The air cannon fist seal instantly dissipated, and the terrifying power contained within it naturally spread out. Chen Feng, who was closest to them, was affected. Chapter 225. Final match. Chen Feng was thrown away like a bag and fell to the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his injuries became even more severe. At the same time, he was even more shocked by Lin Xuan's strength. As expected, Lin Xuan had far surpassed him. He couldn't even withstand the aftershock. He thought of the fact that he was one of the top master-level geniuses in the Scorching Sun domain and wasn't any weaker than Zhang Yukin. But now, it seemed like he wasn't a match for Lin Xuan at all. Whether it was his age or cultivation base, Lin Xuan was much weaker than him. However, his strength had far surpassed his. They were completely incomparable. Thinking about this, Chen Feng revealed a bitter smile. He stood up and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, then walked towards the northern viewing platform in defeat. He no longer had any thoughts of comparing himself with Lin Xuan. The audience in the square was silent for a moment before they started discussing again. As expected, Lin Xuan really won. Lin Xuan was able to defeat Zhou Wenhao with 2 punches. Zhou Wenhao and Chen Feng were both from the 4 young masters. It was perfectly acceptable for Lin Xuan to defeat Chen Feng. I just didn't expect Chen Feng to lose before. He could even withstand a single strike. That's right, Lin Xuan is too strong. Did you notice that Lin Xuan seemed to have used fist techniques instead of sword techniques, or concept from beginning to end? That's right. I heard that Lin Xuan's strongest sword technique is able to kill over 100 spirit opening stage warriors with a single sword strike in Puppet's secret realm. Then Lin Xuan hasn't displayed his true strength yet. He defeated Zhou Wenhao and Chen Feng within 3 moves without using his true strength. Isn't he too strong? I estimate that Lin Xuan will be the champion of this competition. It's very likely. However, Zhang Yuqin is, after all, a Heaven's Pride expert who is much stronger than the other 3 young masters. There should still be a chance for him to win. Everyone was discussing amongst themselves. With the result of the previous match, everyone knew that Lin Xuan would win this match. However, none of them had expected that even though Chen Feng, a master-level genius and chief successor, disciple from the Wind Flame Valley, had used his strongest martial art, he still couldn't withstand a single blow from Lin Xuan. This scene shocked everyone. Especially when they thought about how Lin Xuan had never used his concept before, they were even more shocked. According to the rumors in the Puppet secret realm, Lin Xuan had defeated nearly 100 spirit opening stage warriors with a single sword strike. Obviously, his kendo was stronger. But now, not only had he not used his kendo, but he had also not even used his concept. In other words, Lin Xuan had never used his true strength in this competition. This showed that Lin Xuan's strength was extremely powerful and his talent was very strong. Everyone was once again violently shocked. They were looking forward to the Scorching Sun region competition's final match even more. Although Lin Xuan's strength was unfathomable, Zhang Yuqin wasn't weak either. He was the number 1 genius of Scorching Sun domain and the only genius of Scorching Sun domain. Everyone believed that this would be an exciting battle. On the arena, the Grand Elder of the Yang Essence sect announced loudly, Lin Xuan will win this match. His words caused another wave of commotion in his surroundings. However, with Lin Xuan's defeat of 2 punches in front of them, the audience was not as shocked as before. It did not take long for them to calm down. The Grand Elder continued. Next, we will rest for half an hour before we proceed to the final showdown of this competition. Zhang Yuqin will fight Lin Xuan to decide who will be the champion of this competition. At this moment, Lin Xuan spoke. There's no need to rest. Let's fight. Lin Xuan said it indifferently. He didn't want to waste any more time. He looked towards the east side of the platform and shouted in a stern voice. Zhang Yuqin, do you dare to fight me? What they saw astounded everyone. They didn't expect Lin Xuan to be so confident that he wouldn't even need to rest before challenging Zhang Yuqin. However, he didn't even use the concept to defeat Zhou Wenhao and Chen Feng in just a few moves. This match probably didn't consume much of Lin Xuan's energy. It was understandable that he didn't need to rest. They all looked expectantly at Zhang Yuqin on the east side of the stands. Alright. On the east side of the stands, Zhang Yuqin, who was dressed in red and had a cold expression on his face, stood up and replied in a deep voice. He walked down from the viewing platform and stood opposite Lin Xuan in the arena. The competition begins. Grand Elder did not say anything after seeing this. He glanced at the 2 of them before announcing after Grand Elder finished speaking, he leapt off the arena. He didn't want to affect the battle between the 2 of them. On the stage, Lin Xuan looked at Zhang Yuqin. Zhang Yuqin's. The attribute panel appeared in front of Lin Xuan. Name: Zhang Yuqin. Cultivation: 2nd level of spiritual essence stage talent. profound grade cultivation talent, superior grade strength talent, spirit grade speed talent, spirit grade swordplay talent, superior grade violent wind attribute talent, spirit grade sharp gold talent, spirit grade crimson fire talent, and superior grade green wood attribute talent, superior grade earth talent, top grade heavy water talent martial arts. Ultimate Crimson Sun Swallowing Art, low rank 8, small completion, Flame Sword Art, low rank 8. Small completion, Air Quake Palm, high rank 7, small completion, Falling Mountain Quake Fist high rank 7, small completion, Golden Sun Air Walk high rank 7, great completion concept. 50% sword intent, 40% artistic conception of gold, 40% artistic conception of wind, and 45% artistic conception of fire. 20% artistic conception of wood, 20% artistic conception of earth, and 10% artistic conception of water. Treasure. Fire-a-thorn sword, high rank 7 spirit weapon. Lin Xuan looked at the void in front of him, then at Zhang Yuqin's attribute panel. Lin Xuan's expression also changed slightly. Zhang Yuqin was indeed worthy of being called the #1 genius and the only genius of Scorching Sun domain. This attribute panel of his was indeed worthy of being called the #1 attribute panel of the Scorching Sun domain. If they didn't compete based on their cultivation base, sect leader of Yang Essence Sect and Zhongxing, who was an Origin C Realm level 1, wouldn't be able to compete with Zhang Yuqin. Similarly, Zhang Yuqin's treasure was also a notch higher compared to Chen Feng, Zhou Wenha, and the other young masters. Among them, he also had 2 rank 8 martial arts. It could be seen that Zhang Yuqin's luck was not small. However, these treasures are all his now. There were so many treasures, and Lin Xuan had plenty of energy points in his possession. He naturally couldn't let go of this opportunity. His mind moved. I consumed 200,000 energy points. Duplicated successfully. I attained profound cultivation talent. I expended 200,000 energy points. Duplicated successfully. I consumed 100,000 energy points. Duplication successful. Obtained Fire-a-thorn sword, high rank 7 spirit weapon. In the blink of an eye, Lin Xuan had duplicated all the treasures on Zhang Yuqin's body. Zhang Yuqin's remaining use was to use him to earn a large amount of energy points. Lin Xuan immediately said it in a cold voice. Zhang Yuqin, you don't need to say anything else. Let's fight to determine the winner. After Lin Xuan finished speaking, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the Terminator sword. Chapter 226. Lin Xuan vs. Zhang Yuqin. The Terminator sword was a forbidden weapon, and it was also the inheritance treasure of the Nirvana sword art. It was extremely precious. However, as a divine item, the Terminator sword would naturally keep a low profile. Apart from being extremely hard, the Terminator sword looked black and slippery, and there was nothing strange about it. It was like an ordinary, treasured sword. Even Huyu and Zenrin, who was at the late Elemental C stage, couldn't detect it. Lin Xuan didn't have to worry about anything going wrong. In addition, the Terminator sword was very solid and sharp, so it was quite suitable for Lin Xuan to use it as the sword he needed for a long period of time. Lin Xuan took out the Terminator sword. The expressions of everyone present shook upon seeing this. Lin Xuan's various rumors say that his kendo is the strongest and his fist technique is second. This time around, he has finally used a treasured sword. Zhang Yuqin is indeed the only genius of Scorching Sun domain. He has really made Lin Xuan pay attention to him. Now, I can witness the strength of Lin Xuan's kendo. Zhang Yuqin's combat strength isn't bad either. I think the two of them are going to have a big battle. We can now see the combat strength of these two top geniuses of Scorching Sun domain. Everyone was discussing in low voices, and their faces were filled with excitement. Their eyes were fixed on the arena, and they were looking forward to it even more. On the arena. When Zhang Yuqin saw Lin Xuan take out his sword, his pupils constricted, and his heart trembled slightly. Next, would Lin Xuan use his sword technique? His fist techniques were extremely powerful, and he was able to defeat Zhou Wenha in a row. Chen Feng was one of the two master-level geniuses. Even he didn't have much confidence in winning against Lin Xuan's fist technique. It was rumored that Lin Xuan's sword technique was even stronger. He couldn't even imagine that his chances of winning were even lower. However, the only fortunate thing was that Lin Xuan had used his fist technique to suppress Zhou Wenha and Chen Feng. Lin Xuan had used his sword technique on himself. Compared to Zhou Wenhe and Chen Feng, this also served as a contrast to his own differences. But he remembered that it was always him who stood in the highest position and others who compared him. But today, he reversed the situation in front of Lin Xuan. He also let out a bitter laugh, and a silent feeling of defeat arose in his heart. Immediately, Zhang Yukan threw these distracting thoughts aside and replied in a deep voice. "Alright. Let's settle this in one move." As soon as his voice faded, the aura of a second-level, spiritual essence stage erupted without holding back. After Zhang Yukan witnessed the two previous battles, he knew Lin Xuan's strength. It was very likely that Lin Xuan was stronger than him. There was naturally no need for him to test Lin Xuan. Additionally, he would naturally use his strongest martial art since the outcome depended solely on one move. Immediately after that, 50% sword intent, 40% artistic conception of gold, 40% artistic conception of wind, and 45% artistic conception of fire. Zhang Yukan revealed his four great concepts. In an instant, countless phenomena appeared around his body. Waves of fire surged and wild winds raged. A sharp aura was dancing in the air, tearing everything apart. Within several hundred meters of the arena, it was as if the end of the world had arrived. It was extremely shocking. If a common early spiritual essence stage warrior were present in the arena, Zhang Yukan might not even need to make a move before crushing them and severely injuring them while also sapping their strength. This terrifying power was also more than a level stronger than Zhou Wenhe's and Chen Feng's. The higher-ups of the surrounding powers had also gained some experience. They had spread the spiritual essence stage's aura throughout the surrounding area at the start of the competition, so they were immune to it. However, the collision and friction between the concepts also allowed them to feel Zhang Yukan's strength. Just this aura of Zhang Yukan was not inferior to many of the older mid-spiritual essence stage experts. Zhang Yukan was indeed worthy of being the only genius of Scorching Sun domain. He was truly extraordinary. The higher-ups of the various major powers were secretly shocked. Their eyes were fixed on him. They were looking forward to the upcoming war even more. On the arena, Lin Xuan's expression didn't change when he sensed the might of the battle. The treasured sword in his hand moved to the side and a sharp aura was emitted from his body and shot into the sky. It was the 30% sword intent and the 30% artistic conception of gold. The two concepts instantly exploded, pushing the surrounding force back by 10 meters. In fact, even though Lin Xuan was facing Zhang Yukan, the only genius of the Scorching Sun domain, he could also punch without using any spiritual energy, concepts, or martial arts. He could crush Zhang Yukan with just his physical strength. But if that were the case, he would have to use even more strength. At the same time, that would be too conspicuous. He could cross a major realm with just his physique alone and defeat Zhang Yukan. This was just too strong. Although he had the reputation of a top genius, it was still too dazzling and amazing. He had probably attracted the attention of Huiyuan Zenrin. At that time, it would be very troublesome, even if he had the innate spatial talent. After all, the spatial talent was his final trump card. Its disadvantages were too obvious and easy to deal with. It was fine if he didn't use it, but once he used it, he had to kill all the witnesses. It was only used to deter and prevent accidents. Just like the nuclear bomb in his previous life. So to be safe, it was best for him to preserve some of his strength first. He simply used his sword technique. No matter what, as long as he defeated Zhang Yukan, it would cause the greatest shock. He would obtain the most energy points. As for the process, it was no longer important. As for why he used the sword technique because of Zhang Yuchen, it was fake. There was no need to explain everything clearly. Opposite him, when Zhang Yukan saw his spiritual essence, stage aura, and the full power of his four strongest concepts, he still didn't have the slightest effect on Lin Xuan. Zhang Yukan's expression was cold. He had already expected this. The so-called power only worked on relatively weaker people, and it naturally wouldn't have any effect on opponents with similar strength or stronger opponents. At the same time, it was also through this point that he was able to determine Lin Xuan's strength a step further. He did not dare to underestimate Lin Xuan anymore. After that, he attacked. 9 strikes flame destruction. He shouted in a low voice and continuously slashed with the fire-a-thorn sword. He slashed out 9 sword lights. His spiritual essence surged. In addition to the 4 strongest concepts, he had at least comprehended the 40% enhancement. The 9 sword beams were all condensed, and they were several hundred feet in size. The surrounding area of the sword beams seemed to be burning with the flames of the sun. Even the void seemed to be slightly distorted by it. Its power was terrifying to the extreme. Each of these 9 sword lights was comparable to Chen Feng's strongest attack. The 9 sword beams slashed out at the same time, forming a net of swords. It seemed to have covered the entire sky. It gave people nowhere to run. This kind of power was enough to defeat an ordinary spiritual essence stage, the 4th layer. Immediately after that, 9 huge sword beams formed a net of sword light and it flew towards Lin Xuan from the sky. With countless swords, Qi rushed out from all directions and pierced Lin Xuan. It made it impossible for Lin Xuan to dodge. On the other side, Lin Xuan still had a calm expression. He glanced around. He said in a low voice, "With your 2nd level of spiritual essence stage strength, you can use rank 8 martial arts to this extent. You are already not bad. However, this is still useless to me." After that, Lin Xuan drew his sword. Chapter 227. Lin Xuan had defeated Zhang Yuqin. Lin Xuan pulled out his sword. Falling Lotus. A ray of sword light turned into a lotus and spun quickly. 12 petals bloomed. These 12 petals instantly transformed into 12 streaks of sword light. Then, the petals and the sword radiance merged into one. As the flower petals merged with the sword beams, the 12 sword beams became bigger and bigger. In the next moment, the 12 sword radiances turned into a sword radiance that was 1,000 feet big. The terrifying aura that the sword's radiance gave off was oppressive. Everyone looked at the huge sword light with shocked expressions on their faces. Only someone who had attained the spiritual essence stage could produce such a huge sword light. However, the bigger the sword light was, the more dispersed its power would be, and the weaker its power would be. Lin Xuan's sword light had actually condensed its power, so its power must be very great. What was even more terrifying was that Lin Xuan's strength wasn't at the spiritual essence stage, but at the spirit opening stage. From this, it could be seen that Lin Xuan had a lot of spiritual energy. His spiritual energy was even greater than that of the spiritual essence stage. Spiritual essence. 1. The spiritual essence was equivalent to 10 spirit energies. This also showed how terrifying Lin Xuan's talent was. Everyone sighed in their hearts. They now had a clearer understanding of Lin Xuan's talent. At the same time, they knew that Lin Xuan would definitely win this match. The two of them had previously agreed that the result would be decided in one move. Therefore, they would not hold back their strength any longer. Zhang Yuqin used his strongest move. However, it was clear that Lin Xuan's 300-meter-long sword light was more potent than the net that the 9 sun sword light formed. As expected, on the battlefield, the 9 sun sword light formed a sword net that descended from the sky and encircled Lin Xuan. The 300-meter-long sword light slashed down from the sky. In the next moment, a loud sound rang out. The enormous sword in the middle split, the sky's net of swords in half before it could fall. The 9 sun sword light dispersed in all directions. The huge sword significantly reduced its power. However, the huge sword didn't stop. It didn't slash at Zhang Yuqin either. Instead, it swept in all directions. The size of the 9 sun sword light wasn't even half of the huge sword the moment they touched. Huge explosions kept sounding out. The 9 sun sword light instantly exploded and shattered. The power of the huge sword was slightly weakened, but its size and speed remained the same. It continued to slash at Zhang Yuqin. This kind of terrifying power seemed to be able to tear the sky apart. As expected, I still lost. Seeing this, Zhang Yuqin let out a bitter laugh and said it in a low voice. His face showed a defeated expression. His strongest attack could even defeat an ordinary spiritual essence stage 4th layer. However, when Lin Xuan used his sword technique, Lin Xuan's sword light easily defeated him. Lin Xuan's expression remained calm from the beginning to the end. Up until now, Lin Xuan had yet to reveal his true strength. The gap between them was hard to imagine. Zhang Yuqin was the #1 genius of Scorching Sun domain. After Lin Xuan struck him, his pride completely vanished. He didn't even want to live anymore. The huge sword also made him feel like a great threat. He didn't try to dodge. Because this power was too strong, he couldn't dodge. Moreover, since he had already lost, this huge sword wouldn't be able to harm him. The Grand Elder, who was standing next to him, would save him. As expected, the huge sword stopped in midair. A huge white palm appeared out of nowhere and grabbed the huge sword. With a light squeeze, the huge sword was crushed. Even the aftermath did not spread out, nor did it affect the battlefield. It was the Grand Elder from the Yang Essence sect who attacked. After that, Grand Elder jumped onto the arena and announced, Lin Xuan has won this match. The top three are Lin Xuan, Zhang Yuqin, and Chen Feng. The Scorching Sun region competition's champion this time is Lin Xuan. Grand Elder also knew that, since he had interfered in this competition, the battle would be over. Furthermore, it was Lin Xuan who won. Otherwise, Huiyuan Zenren would have to show himself. He and even the entire Yang Essence sect could not withstand the fury of late elemental sea stage Huiyuan Zenren. At the same time, the other major powers of Scorching Sun domain wouldn't agree to it. After saying that, his eyes swept across Lin Xuan with great shock. Although he had destroyed Lin Xuan's 300-meter sword light, he could still feel the power of the sword light. Not to mention a spiritual essence stage 4th layer warrior, even a spiritual essence stage warrior at the 5th or 6th level might not be able to withstand Lin Xuan's sword light. Lin Xuan, on the other hand, had a calm expression on his face. It seemed like he had not used up any energy at all. He was not even sure if Lin Xuan had used all of his strength. What was even more terrifying was that Lin Xuan's cultivation base and chi were only at the 8th level of spirit opening stage. A sword beam actually had such power. He could imagine how terrifying Lin Xuan was. The Grand Elder sighed in his heart. He knew that Zhang Yuqin had lost completely this time. Lin Xuan had completely surpassed him, whether it was in terms of strength or talent. As expected, Lin Xuan was going to be another Heaven's Pride expert. Furthermore, his ranking would be much higher than Zhang Yuqin's. As for the Drifting Cloud sect behind Lin Xuan, the Yang Essence sect had to change their attitude and take the initiative to express goodwill to them. With Lin Xuan's talent, it wouldn't take him more than a few years to rise up and surpass the Yang Essence sect. Naturally, he needed to treat it seriously. After the Grand Elder finished speaking, a commotion broke out in the arena, like boiling water. This match has ended just like that. I haven't seen enough yet. Zhang Yuqin hasn't been thrown off the arena yet. Are you stupid? Their match was to determine the victor with one move. Zhang Yuqin must have used his strongest martial art, but he still couldn't block Lin Xuan's sword attack. Of course, Lin Xuan won. I estimate that if it wasn't for the Yang Essence sect's Grand Elder saving Zhang Yuqin, Lin Xuan's sword would have severely injured him. The gap between them was too obvious. That's right. Lin Xuan's strength is too strong. I estimate that he has already reached the mid-spiritual essence stage. This time, the name of the number 1 genius of Scorching Sun domain will fall on Lin Xuan. His talent and strength will be the same. Lin Xuan will also be the next genius of Scorching Sun domain, and he will be even stronger than Zhang Yuqin. Everyone was discussing amongst themselves, and they couldn't help but cry out in shock. Many of them had already guessed that Lin Xuan would win this match. After all, Lin Xuan's strength was unfathomable. He didn't even need to use 3 moves to defeat the 2 young masters, Zhou Wenhe and Chen Feng. It was very likely that Zhang Yuqin wouldn't be able to defend against Lin Xuan. However, they had never thought that this would be the result. Lin Xuan had actually easily defeated Zhang Yuqin. It was as if their skills were not on the same level. It was not that Lin Xuan was a realm lower than Zhang Yuqin. Chapter 228. Zhang Yuanchang. Everyone just can't believe the difference between them. Lin Xuan's strength and potential once again astounded everyone. On the south side of the platform, the upper echelons and disciples of the various forces of the Grey Yuan sect were stunned. They couldn't believe this fact. They didn't react until the Grand Elder from the Yang Essence sect announced the result. All of them were shocked and overjoyed. This time, the Scorching Sun region competition's first place was actually from the Kangyuan country and not the Red Flame country. This was the first time in the past few decades. This also meant that the Scorching Sun domain would no longer be the sole ruler of the Red Flame country. The Kangyuan country might rise again. The higher-ups and disciples of the 5 major powers of the Kangyuan country all had joyful expressions on their faces as they cheered. Among them, the people of the Drifting Cloud sect were the most excited and shocked. They had never thought that this time, the Scorching Sun region competition would end with Lin Xuan defeating Zhang Yukin with his sword. Originally, Lin Xuan's talent was outstanding. After the incident in Puppet Secret Realm, Lin Xuan had the title of the 5th master level genius. But from their point of view, Lin Xuan was at most on par with the 4 young masters. They still didn't know about Lin Xuan's ability, because the time Lin Xuan had to rise to power was too short. From the beginner level until now, it had only been 2 months. In these 2 months, the average disciple could barely get used to the environment of the outer sect. Lin Xuan, on the other hand, had been cultivating at an unimaginable speed. Lin Xuan had gone from beginner level to a true disciple, and he was also the chief successor disciple. Lin Xuan was the #1 disciple in the younger generation of Drifting Cloud sect and even Kangyuan country, and he was ranked first on the potential role rankings. His speed of advancement was already shocking enough, and he had created an unprecedented record in the Scorching Sun domain. The 4 young masters, on the other hand, had long become the top geniuses of the Scorching Sun domain. In their point of view, no matter how much of a genius Lin Xuan was, it would still take some time for him to surpass the 4 young masters. They thought that they had overestimated Lin Xuan. But they never thought that they had underestimated Lin Xuan. In the Scorching Sun region competition, Lin Xuan defeated Zhou Wenha and Chen Feng within 3 moves. Zhang Yukin, the original top genius of the Scorching Sun domain, defeated Lin Xuan. Such a performance and the talent, potential, and strength that he had displayed far exceeded their imagination. All the higher-ups and disciples of the Drifting Cloud sect were in a state of endless shock, unable to calm down. At the same time, wild joy emerged in their hearts. Lin Xuan was from the Drifting Cloud sect. With Lin Xuan's talent and potential, it shouldn't be difficult for him to break through to the Origin Sea realm. He only needed a few years. He might even be able to break through to the Origin Sea realm. Under Lin Xuan's leadership, the Drifting Cloud sect would be able to rise to prominence. It was only a matter of time before the Drifting Cloud sect could compare with the Yang Essence sect. In fact, the Drifting Cloud sect might even be stronger. Everyone was overjoyed and cheered. The northern stands, the eastern stands, and the 3 major powers of Red Flame country were all silent. Their eyes couldn't help shifting back and forth between Lin Xuan and the southern stands, flashing with extreme envy. They had never imagined that the Kangyuan country, which was in the Scorching Sun domain's wilderness and which they had always ignored, would actually be home to a genius like Lin Xuan. Even the chief successor disciple, the only genius of Scorching Sun domain that they had nurtured with their full strength, couldn't even withstand a single blow from Lin Xuan. Lin Xuan's cultivation base was much lower than theirs. This showed how powerful Lin Xuan's talent was. They were naturally envious. At the same time, they knew that their attitude towards Kangyuan country would have to change a little in the future. They even had to split some of the benefits for the Kangyuan country. Lin Xuan had already risen to prominence, and he was unstoppable. As long as Lin Xuan didn't die in the middle of the battle, it would be hard for them to imagine his achievements. They estimated that Lin Xuan would be the #1 expert in the Scorching Sun domain in just a few years' time. At that time, Lin Xuan returned. If Lin Xuan was slightly dissatisfied with them, they would be doomed. The higher-ups of the 3 major powers sighed in their hearts. At this time, a hearty voice came from the top of the eastern platform. Although this voice was very calm and not loud, it instantly spread to the ears of everyone in the square. This voice came from Huiyuan Zenrin. Since the competition has ended, it's time for me to get down to business. The top 20 should gather below the eastern stands. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd quieted down. When Lin Xuan heard this, his eyes flashed. He jumped off the arena and walked towards the eastern stands. When Zhang Yukin heard this, he hurriedly followed Lin Xuan. The remaining top 20, Chen Feng, Wuxin, Luciania, and the rest also stood up, walked down from the grandstand, and gathered there. Not long after, the top 20 were all gathered under the eastern grandstand. Among them, Lin Xuan was at the very front. Chen Feng came in second, then Zhang Yukin. Zhou Wenha, Wuxin behind them were Luciania, Duan Fakin, Chen Hanchuang, and the others. Regarding this, none of them had any objections. This was based on the order of strength, and it couldn't be any fairer. On the grandstand, Huiyuan Zenrin also stood up. He turned into a fiery light and flew down. He landed in front of these 20 people. Huiyuan Zenrin's eyes swept across them. His gaze landed on Lin Xuan, who was standing at the front, and he revealed a faint smile. Lin Xuan's gaze also swept toward Huiyuan Zenrin. A light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Name: Zhang Yuan Chang. Cultivation: Origin C Realm Level 7. Talent: Profound Grade Cultivation Talent, Spirit Grade Strength Talent, Spirit Grade Speed Talent, Spirit Grade Saber Talent, Spirit Grade Violent Wind Attribute Talent, Spirit Grade Sharp Gold Talent, Superior Grade Crimson Fire Talent, and Superior Grade Green Wood Attribute Talent, Superior Grade Earth Talent, Top Grade Heavy Water Talent. Martial Arts: Windwave Troop High Rank 8 Grade Completion, Wave Breaker Sword Art, Rank 8, Mid-Grade, Peak, Golden Extinguishing Finger, Rank 8, Mid-Grade, Peak. Wind Rushing Palm, Rank 8 Mid-Grade, Peak, 1000-Mile Soaring Walk, High Rank 8 Grade Completion. Concept: 80% Saber Intent, 70% Artistic Conception of Gold, 70% Artistic Conception of Wind, 50% Half Artistic Conception of Fire, 50% Artistic Conception of Wood, 50% Artistic Conception of Earth. Treasure: None. Lin Xuan looked at Huiyuan Zenrin's attribute panel. Lin Xuan was also shocked. Huiyuan Zenrin was indeed a warrior from the core area of Fengwu State. His attribute panel had left the deepest impression on Lin Xuan. Lin Xuan was wild with joy. He had so many treasures, he couldn't let them go. After that, Lin Xuan looked at the bottom of his attribute panel. Do I still have 15 million energy points? Lin Xuan muttered in his heart. His expression revealed a slight sense of joy. He did not expect that he would actually have so many energy points saved up. It should be because he caused a huge stir in the Scorching Sun region competition today. Although he had duplicated the treasures of the 4 young masters and used up some of the energy points, the total number of energy points did not decrease but instead increased instead. He had accumulated 15 million energy points. Chapter 229. Millennium Glory World. Such a huge amount of energy points was naturally enough to duplicate all the treasures on Huiyuan Zenrin's body. Lin Xuan immediately took action. I consumed 200,000 energy points. Duplicated successfully. Obtained Profound Grade Cultivation Talent, I consumed 200,000 energy points. Duplication successful. Obtained Wind Wave Troop, High Rank 8, Great Completion, I consumed 200,000 energy points. Duplication successful. Obtained 80% Saber Intent in the blink of an eye. Lin Xuan had duplicated all the treasures on Huiyuan Zenrin's body. He was very satisfied. With so many treasures, he would be able to improve his strength by leaps and bounds when he returned and absorbed them. After that, he looked at Huiyuan Zenrin and waited. Huiyuan Zenrin, who was standing opposite him, naturally didn't notice anything unusual. He smiled faintly and said, "Congratulations to all of you for obtaining the quota to participate in the Profound Essence List ranking competition. This is your token for participating in the competition. Keep it up. Remember to go to the Profound Essence Ancient City to participate in the competition in half a month's time." After he finished speaking, a stack of black tokens with a metallic luster appeared in his hand. After that, this stack of black tokens accurately flew into the hands of the top 20 participants. Lin Xuan's heart trembled when he saw this. This strength was far from what he could achieve. Immediately, he looked at the black token in his hand. It was completely black, and it gave off a cold metallic feeling. An extremely enormous ancient arena was inscribed on the back. And on the front of it were written the words Xuanyuan. It was the Profound Essence List competition token. After a few glances, Lin Xuan put it into the storage ring. Of course, this only means that you have the qualifications to participate in the Profound Essence List ranking competition. Whether or not you can shine brightly in the ranking competition and become famous throughout Fengwu State will depend on your own abilities. Huiyuan Zenrin continued. The top 20 people nodded slightly to express their understanding. They were only qualified to enter the arena, and it was far from the time for them to be proud. After that, Huiyuan Zenrin's gaze landed on Zhang Yukin, who was the leader of the 4 young masters. He said, "Zhang Yukin, you were ranked 93rd on the Profound Essence List last time. How much has your strength improved after 3 years? If it's not enough, not only will you not advance, but you might also even fall back, and you might not even be able to make it onto the list. Zhang Yuqin frowned when he heard this. In these 3 years, his strength has naturally improved a lot. But without comparison, he didn't know how much his strength had improved in Huiyuan Zenrin's eyes. However, Huiyuan Zenrin did not explain. Instead, he looked at Lin Xuan and said with a smile on his face, Lin Xuan, if I am not wrong, you should not be 18 yet, right? Senior Huiyuan Zenrin, I am indeed not 18 years old. Lin Xuan replied in a deep voice. In this life, he was not even 16 years old. The people in the top 20 were shocked when they heard this. They looked at Lin Xuan in disbelief. He had such a cultivation base before he was even 18 years old. This was too terrifying. Then his talent was too high. They couldn't even imagine it. Everyone sank into an incomparable state of shock. Huiyuan Zenrin's eyes were also filled with shock as he continued. Lin Xuan, with your cultivation base and ability to jump ranks to challenge someone, you can be considered a top genius even in the entire Fengwu state. If you can break through to the spiritual essence stage before the profound essence list ranking competition starts, it shouldn't be difficult for you to be ranked on the profound essence list. Unfortunately, this period of time is too short. You should only be ranked at the bottom of the profound essence list. It will be very difficult for you to achieve a better result. As he spoke, Huiyuan Zenrin sighed with emotion. When Lin Xuan heard this, his expression became serious as he asked, why is that? Senior Huiyuan Zenrin, can you explain it to me? I can tell you all. Huiyuan Zenrin smiled and said, because this year is close to 1,000 years of prosperity. On the Tinyuana continent, every 1,000 years is a golden age. During this golden age, many opportunities will appear in every region, and all kinds of top geniuses will be born. The geniuses on the original profound essence list would experience many fortuitous encounters, and their strength would skyrocket. For example, Mr. Leon, who was ranked 7th in the last profound essence list, had killed 3 Origin C Realm level 1 warriors with a bolt of lightning. The top 10 dancers on the last profound essence list had all broken through to the Origin C Realm without exception. Zhou Juchen, who was ranked 37 in the last profound essence list, was killed by a young man who was only 20 years old in the Great Desert of the Northwest region with a single strike of his sword. Following Huiyuan Zenrin's explanation, the top 20 people on the scene couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The last batch of profound essence list's top 10 warriors had actually broken through to the Origin C realm. Moreover, any one of them could easily kill an ordinary Origin C realm level 1 warrior. Aren't they too powerful? There was only one Origin C realm warrior in the entire Scorching Sun domain, Jiangxing. But he was only at Origin C realm level 1. A young man who was nearly 20 years old instantly killed more than 30 warriors who were close to the spiritual essence stage peak. No wonder Huiyuan Zenrin said that Zhang Yuqin might not be able to enter the last batch of geniuses. A top genius like Lin Xuan would need to break through to the spiritual essence stage before he could enter the ranking, but his result would not be good. So that's how it was. It seemed like the competition for the profound essence list this year was unimaginably difficult. The top 20 warriors on the field all became silent when they heard this, and their expressions became incomparably heavy. However, Lin Xuan still had an indifferent expression. It was as if this grim situation had no effect on him at all. The other 20 warriors in the top 20 were all silent. They did not notice Lin Xuan's expression and attitude. Huiyuan Zenrin, who had been paying attention to Lin Xuan, was shocked when he noticed Lin Xuan's expression. After he said those words, Lin Xuan's expression did not change at all. Could it be that, in this golden age, Lin Xuan still had the confidence to obtain outstanding results and rankings? And in this competition, didn't Lin Xuan display his true strength? Did he still have a trump card? When Huiyuan Zenrin thought of this, his heart was greatly shaken and filled with anticipation. You all need to know all of this. Huiyuan Zenrin said a few more words. Alright. I should go back. I hope to see all of you show off in the profound essence list ranking competition in half a month's time and become famous in the Fengwu state. After he finished speaking, he took out a small red boat and stood on it. He took a deep look at Lin Xuan, then jumped into the sky, turned into a ray of fiery light, and disappeared into the horizon. Lin Xuan's expression became serious. I consumed 200,000 energy points. Duplicated successfully. Obtained Crimson Spirit Boat, high rank 8 flying spiritual device. A cold notification sounded from the system. Chapter 230. Leave. In an instant, the moment Huyu and Zenran took out the Crimson Spirit Boat, Lin Xuan copied it. He placed it in the walk space. This was a type of flying spiritual device that could fly at an extremely fast speed. This was because a flying spiritual device was several times more expensive than an ordinary spirit weapon. There was not a single flying spiritual device in the entire Kangyuan country. Furthermore, he still had to leave the Scorching Sun domain. He wanted to head to the Maple Martial region of Fengwu State. He also needed a means of transportation. He couldn't waste his time on traveling. Even if he didn't need a flying spiritual device in the future, he could sell it in exchange for a batch of spirit stones. It could be said that he would definitely make a profit. He naturally wouldn't let it go. After that, he watched Huyu and Zenran leave. Lin Xuan turned around and walked towards the south side of the platform. The remaining top 20 also returned to their respective powers. Before this, Huyu and Zenran could not hide what he said. They were all core disciples of the higher-ups of the major powers. The lowest cultivation base among them was at the spirit opening stage. Their perception far exceeded that of ordinary martial artists. Of course, they had heard of this before. Everyone was silent. They looked at Lin Xuan, Zhang Yuqin, and the others. They had mixed feelings about the top 20. According to what Huyu and Zenran had said, this time, other than Lin Xuan and Zhang Yuqin, the rest of them could only broaden their horizons. They would probably be eliminated, and they wouldn't be able to make it onto the list. Even Zhang Yuqin, who was originally ranked on the Profound Essence list, might lose his ranking. He might not be able to make it into the rankings again. The only one who could make it onto the list was the number 1 genius of the Scorching Sun region competition, the new number 1 genius of the Scorching Sun domain, Lin Xuan. In other words, the Scorching Sun domain might only have 1 genius. However, this person was no longer Zhang Yuqin, but Lin Xuan. The higher-ups of the various major powers had mixed feelings. They didn't know what to say. On the south side of the platform, the disciples of the higher-ups of the 5 major powers of Kangyuan country also walked down. Lin Xuan, Lu Qiannia, Chen Hanchuang, and Sun Yuan, these 4 people who had obtained the quotas, all returned to their respective powers in silence. Due to Huyu and Zenran's previous words, the atmosphere on the scene became somewhat oppressive. The higher-ups of the major powers didn't say anything else. Let's go back as well. Sect leader and Lu Wua said after that. He expressed his gratitude to the Grand Elder from the Yang Essence sect. The Grand Elder replied politely. He also personally sent the people from the Drifting Cloud sect to the reception square. If it were in the past, the Yang Essence sect would only send an ordinary elder to receive the 5 major powers of Kangyuan country. After all, the gap between the Red Flame country and the Kangyuan country was obvious. As the number 1 major power in Scorching Sun domain, an ordinary elder was enough to approach, or even compare with the sect leader of Drifting Cloud sect, Lu Wua. To them, it was normal for them to choose an ordinary elder. But this time, it was Grand Elder who personally sent them off, and his attitude was very polite. This was a treatment that even the royal family of Red Flame country and the 2 major powers of Wind Flame Valley might not be able to get. And all of this came from Lin Xuan. The higher-ups of the 5 major powers in Kangyuan country were also filled with emotion. After that, the people of the Drifting Cloud sect sat on the back of the Gold Feather Eagle. Under Grand Elder's watch, the people of the Drifting Cloud sect rode on the Gold Feather Eagle and left. On the way, Lin Xuan sat behind, Lu Wua with his eyes closed, resting. Everyone knew that Lin Xuan might not be in a good mood right now, so they all kept silent. But in reality, it was not the case. Huyu and Zenran's words did give him some insight. But he would not feel pressured because of this. On the contrary, he felt much more relaxed. Because, according to Huyu and Zenran's words, he also knew about the situation in the Profound Essence List ranking competition. The top 10 Profound Essence List rankings in the previous Maple Martial region were all Origin C Realm Level 1. After the top 10 were the Spiritual Essence stages as well. If he used his true strength, although his cultivation base hadn't reached the Origin C realm, he had also reached the Spiritual Essence stage peak. Furthermore, he was one of the experts at the Spiritual Essence stage peak. Therefore, he was fearless. However, with my current strength, it's basically impossible for me to enter the top 10 of the Profound Essence list. And if I really want to spread my name to Fengwu State, then I'll obtain the most energy points. No matter what, I have to enter the top 10. It looks like in the remaining half month, I'll have to increase my strength by another level. Just in case, I need to improve my Golden Scale Barbaric Elephant arts. Lin Xuan seemed to be adjusting his breathing with his eyes closed, but in fact, he was secretly calculating in his heart. Soon, half an hour had passed. The gold feather eagle flew back to the Drifting Cloud sect and stopped in the sect leader peak central square. After Lin Xuan jumped down, he prepared to return to his own residence. Now that he had used up all his cultivation resources, he didn't plan to stay in the Drifting Cloud sect any longer. He planned to return to Green Jade City to visit the Liu family, and then he would go out and train. He only had half a month left, but he couldn't afford to delay any longer. At this moment, sect leader Lu Wu's voice rang out. "Nephew Lin, wait for me." "Sect leader, what do you want?" Lin Xuan turned to Lu Wu and asked in a deep voice. "Nephew Lin, this is the reward for the Scorching Sun region competition's first place. 400,000 low-grade spirit stone. Besides that, your performance in this competition is outstanding, and you have won glory for our Drifting Cloud sect. I will reward you with 100,000 low-grade spirit stones. Take it." Lu Wu said it with a faint smile. After that, he handed the 2 storage rings to Lin Xuan. He knew that with Lin Xuan's extraordinary talent, which had already surpassed the level of Scorching Sun domain, the amount of cultivation resources he needed for every breakthrough was far greater than the others. Therefore, he took out 100,000 low-grade spirit stones from his sect as a reward and gave them to Lin Xuan. It was to support and invest in Lin Xuan. He hoped that Lin Xuan could achieve a better result in the Profound Essence List ranking competition. "Thank you, sect leader." Lin Xuan thanked him and accepted the gift. Also, this year's competition in the Profound Essence List ranking competition is much harder than the previous ones. Don't feel too pressured. Being able to make it onto the list is already considered outstanding. You have already won great honor for our Drifting Cloud sect and the Red Sun domain. You just have to do your best. Lu Wu said it earnestly. "Sect leader, I understand." Lin Xuan nodded and said, "Sect leader, I will be leaving the Scorching Sun domain for tough training. I can't go to the Maple Martial region with the sect. Let's meet up in the Profound Essence Ancient City in half a month's time." Lu Wu was startled when he heard this. He immediately reacted and said solemnly, "On, you can go." The Scorching Sun domain was still too small to nurture a true dragon. The wider world outside is the most suitable for you. But you have to remember that the sect will always be your backer. If you are injured or tired outside, you can come back at any time. The sect will always welcome you. Thank you, sect leader. Thank you for nurturing me. I will never forget. I'm leaving. Lin Xuan's expression was solemn as he cupped his hands and bowed. After which, Lin Xuan turned around resolutely and left with large strides.